That I think the amount of players that are out there that can play at a high skill level now is incredible. What I don't you don't see as much as is them playing together as a group. There's a lot of individual play, a lot of onus on the one guy, the top player. But that's how it is at the top level. So we've got who's the best player. Toronto Maple Leafs. They're gonna spit a name out you over here. So you got your top four guys. A lot of guys are just really focusing on being in the top four versus trying to focus on back in our day. Like I had no problem focusing on being a role player guy, a guy that hit, like to fight, like to block shots, like to make passes, like to be a skill, like to set up the skill guy and be there for him. They
Yeah.
don't really have that now. It's I want to score every shift I'm on the ice. I don't want to play defense, so my preparation is that way. And then when we put them into a challenging role of something that they're not generally used to, it becomes quite chaotic, actually.
That was two-time Memorial Cup champion and two-time Stanley Cup champion Brad Lukowich. And you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin.
Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hey there, and welcome back to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin. I am your host, Jason Podolin, and this is episode 144 on the docket, and we are speaking with Brad Lukowich. Brad Lukowich is a long-time NHLer, 658 games to his credit. He did win 2 Stanley Cups, one in which he got his name engraved on it, and one in which he didn't. Yet still played 8 games that season with the Dallas Stars in 1999. That was when he was first getting his feet wet in the league. And he went on to play for the Tampa Bay Lightning, where he won his second cup. He also went to the Islanders. He was with the Devils. He was back with the Lightning. He was with the Sharks. Had a cup of coffee in Vancouver, and then ended his career back in Dallas. He also spent some time in the IHL and AHL, and maybe as notable as his NHL career was his junior career with the Kamloops Blazers, where he was a part of the dynasty of major junior hockey that went to 3 cup, actually won 3 in a row. I don't think he was part of the first one. He won in 94, he won in 95. The likes of, and we talk about it a little bit on the discussion, but, Jerome McGinley might be a name you recall. Shane Doan might be a name that you recall. Darcy Tucker might be a name that you recall. And others, Tyson Nash, Jason Holland, Strudwick, Lukowich himself. The list goes on as far as the types of names that were on this Kamloops Blazers squad during that time when we were trying to win points off them in Spokane. And quite a special thing they had there. So we talk about that time in Kamloops. Brad is now also a U15 head coach for a AA team outside of Dallas that is traveling across Western North America. They were just up at a tournament in Vancouver. So now he is wearing the coaching hat after his years and years of experience as a player. He doesn't have a player on the team. He's just doing it for the love and wants to give back. And we definitely dip our toe into the waters of youth hockey and development and his philosophies and strategies around that while we intertwine his career and some of the lessons he learned with that. So, yeah, Luco is a great guy. He's one of those teammates that everyone recalls fondly. Not so fondly if you were to play against him. He always played a hard-nosed game and made you earn every inch, and I think that was one of the things that was really respected about him throughout his time in the NHL and as a pro. And one of those things that he does recall as a Kamloops Blazer that was taught to him early, how to provide value and how to gain self-esteem in knowing what that value is. And that was one of the undercurrents of our conversation here today. Lots of lessons for the amateur player trying to get somewhere. Lots of lessons for the parents on the call as usual, and hopefully also for coaches out there on what to place your emphasis on in your strategies in developing players these days. So not often you get a two-time Stanley Cup champion on the show. Not often you get a two-time Memorial Cup champion on the show, and even rarer to have both combined in the same package. I wonder how many players in history have been able to do that. There sure as heck can't be very many. It would be a very short list. So yeah, feel grateful that you're here to listen to some lessons by Brad Lukowich, two-time Memorial Cup champion, two-time Stanley Cup champion, and player of 658 NHL regular season games. Brad Lukowich, coming at you now. All right, here we are for episode 144, and I don't know what to call you. I mean, definitely a buddy, but an old adversary for sure. I mean, we battled in the corners a few times, but either way, friend and foe, Brad Lukowich, welcome to the pod, partner.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, tons of fun. We tried to do it, like I
Yeah.
said before we got on here. I forget at some point it never worked out, and we've been going back and forth on text messages, and I was like, let's do it, and it worked out today. So cool.
Yeah,
So you're in Dallas, right?
I am. I'm down in Dallas. I live just up north, about 45 minutes in a little town, Salina.
Cool. So you decided to call Dallas home after you finished your career there.
Well, when I married my wife back in the day, it was kind of one of those ones where, there's a chance you can travel, but, being from here, I love Dallas. And if we do leave, we'll always have an opportunity to come back. So at the end of my career, really didn't know where to go. And we decided to come back down here and fulfill that promise. And she's doing good and I'm doing good in the hockey world. So
Sweet.
I'm glad we came.
So she's a local Dallas girl then.
She's from about 80 miles out, a little town called Jacksboro. Her dad still lives up there, and so it's a far drive from us, hour and 20 minutes. We can be there, so
Cool.
not bad at all.
How's the alumni community there?
The alumni community is slowly growing. Actually, obviously the timing of the years, right? So now that it's been here for 30 years, a lot of those guys that first came here went right home. Now the guys that have made Dallas a home, that we're the kind of the original members. There's about 15 of us here, and then we also extend that out to the guys that didn't just play in Dallas, but maybe were from here or played from another team and married a local girl or something like that. So they also are here. So we have also our NHL alumni guys here that we kind of share the space with. And then, it's growing. We got a couple new guys, a couple new dads that have some kids in hockey with Hemmer, Alice Hemsky, and now with Jordy Ben, kind of just hanging him up. We've seen him at the rink. We got little Justin Courtnall here in town now too.
Oh, okay.
So those are the three newest guys. We got Blake Como recently last year, and then so those are kind of our newest members right now. So if anyone wants to play us, we got a few ringers. So it's we're still pretty competitive.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you like some of the names that are there. So those are a lot of names that people would recognize that are kicking around. And I know because we talked before, but for those at home, you're supposed to be on a pickup game right now. So are most of those guys on the ice?
Yeah, they're out on the ice right now. I'm on it's kind of like on the injured reserve, I guess. I'd get fined if it was for real. No, I have a friend of mine that I'm very blessed to be buddies with. He works with Metallica, so he's kind of busy all the time. And when he's home, he does tattoos. So our schedules, just kind of like with us, we had a chance where they crossed paths, and I jumped in the chair and not knowing we had a skate today. So I'm just taking the precautionary. It's not a long-term injury. It's just a couple of days. As you're older, you got to take care of yourself a little bit more.
Hey, would that be considered a lower body injury or an upper body injury?
It was a lower body. I've got a whole leg sleeve that I've been working on for about 2 years. So I finally got a chance to. We're almost there. We got about probably 1 or 2 more visits. My buddy Hammer, he does a heck of a job. So we're excited to get her done here. Hopefully the next couple months.
So I had no idea we were going to talk about tattoos, but I do have to ask you. So I 16 years old, played hockey down in Spokane. I don't know how or what, but like they let me go into a tattoo parlor and got 2 tattoos actually. One was Sean Gillum after we won the gold for the World Juniors, and then an ankle one, like typical at the time, right? Like it's Wile
Yeah,
E.
I got a couple.
Coyote holding the hockey stick, right? So, but the one on my ankle, like I remember was, I mean, I'll call it excruciating. Like it was a painful thing. The one on my thigh, not so much. Like anything for you there with the leg tattoo? Any areas more sensitive than others?
Yeah, the back of the knee is a scorcher. Front of the knee is a scorcher, and then that ankle area is really, really tough. So that it
Right.
was this. This was the ending of mine. It was the inside of the calf and my shin all the way down to the ankle. A couple turtles on there, and it was. I felt every little bit of it. It's like they were eating me, man. That was a rough one, real tough one today.
Crazy. Okay, so I'm not alone in that then. I haven't had many tattoo discussions, but I just remember being like grabbing the place that I was lying on there, and it was tough. The ankle was a good one
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it was rough.
Um, all right, man. You know what? I want to start. I love going back. I do this every time. Like when we were younger, we didn't have a chance to look at anything online because there was Hockey DB never existed or Elite Prospects or any of these scenarios, and
Yeah,
so now you can go back and look at players like yourself and see where you actually were and where you went and
yeah,
what the journey was like, and
yeah,
pretty exciting. I mean, once we crossed paths, I don't know how it was with you, but junior, we were all together. We were all fighting
yeah.
for the same stuff and, playing against each other all the time. And then all of a sudden we turned pro and you kind of lost track of everybody,
Yeah.
really. Um, let's talk about the Kamloops Blazers, because we'd be stupid not to. It was probably one of the biggest destinies or dynasties, I should say, ever.
Yeah.
And you were a part of it. Just straight up, what was your first memory of that group and your time there in Kamloops?
That team, it's just such a special group. I remember all the stuff off the ice, but a lot of times you say you don't remember the on ice stuff. I do remember a lot of the on ice stuff about how amazing Jerome was, how incredible Shane Doan was. Not only were they good, but they were tough. They were so focused. Like everything about that team, you kind of, if anything was to be, you're not supposed to use the word perfect when you're a coach, but man, that team was perfect. There's everything about it. We were tough. We were fast. We loved each other. We were relentless. We do anything for one another. I mean, to this day, give these guys a phone call, that the next guy would be there for them. It was such a brotherhood. We always hung out with one another. We always stuck up for one another. Just a very, very special bond that you have. And winning teams have that moving forward when you get into to winning, even at the higher level. It's different at junior because you're going through a lot of things in your life in that time. There's a big transition, and obviously with the just becoming kind of a celebrity in your hometown. Like
Yeah.
you're a pretty big deal living in Kamloops. That team that is a very coveted team by the city. It's owned by the city, so you're representing a lot more than just the Blazers, right? So Blazer pride meant the whole city was behind you. And when I mean that, I don't people understand what that really means. Down to the billets, to the Zamboni drivers, to the police officers letting us scream by to make sure that we're not late for practice. Because if we were, then Don Hay was going to sit out some of the best players because he would do that. So, like, ooh, well, I hope that was so and so because if not, we're going to be late. And the light, give a little flash of the lights, and we just keep on going. And there'd be 9 guys in the car, making sure you're not late for practice. But those are those things, those team bonding things that you just you every now and then I'll just chuckle like, how was Kamloops like, and I'll just laugh. Wait till I tell you this story. you know
Right.
and it's just those funny little things that happen that they're just so awesome. And then there's no doubt in our minds there was better teams probably on paper that year in '94, because really ultimately we were building for '95.
Yeah.
Portland had a killer team. Spokane had a killer team, a little bit older than us too,
Yeah.
right? So there was that kind of like, well, maybe these guys are going to be good, but maybe they're just not there. And
Yeah.
then in '94 at Christmas, when it all clicked for us, and the guys from World Junior came back, and we kind of saw what we had in front of us, we just kind of focused on ourselves, how we focus on how we can make each other better. There's that friendly competition that you talked about earlier that we had, not even playing on the same team. Well, that resonated inside our walls where, if I did 10 push-ups, Jerome was going to do 11, and if Jerome did 11, then Shane did 12. And as
Yeah.
you're leaving the room, you look over your shoulder and there's Jerome McGinley making sure that he's doing two more. So he did 13. So there's always that constant competition, which you saw that and you wanted to be better. You also didn't want to let each other down. So to me, that's what Kamloops taught me. It's what drove me to be a winner, and I believe that's why teams in the future wanted me around. That's where I learned it, and it was just ingrained in me. Like,
Yeah.
put the team first, team first, team first. Then think about yourself, because if you're not thinking about yourself and being the best part of your puzzle, then the team doesn't work. So that was kind of the ingrained at a young age through, I can go back to Colin Patterson and then Don Hay through Tom Rennie and all those guys. That was that Blazer pride culture, and moving to Kalamazoo, Hitch was a coach there. So he brought that culture there, then into Dallas. So for
Yeah.
me, my transition that way was actually quite easy.
Right. Wow. Yeah. You touched on it. I'm making notes here as you go, like that. You don't know. Well, I assume. I mean, you said there that what you had was special, right? And it was. It turned out that it was, and it turns out that it was a gift of a lesson and all these other things. Yet at the time, you weren't like, "Hey, this is a dynasty we're on right now," or "This is," like you don't really recognize what it is until sometimes when you leave. And I know a lot of guys have come on and said, once you've seen that, you want to replicate it, or at least you have an idea of it, but it's not the easiest thing to do. And there's so many factors that come into developing a culture like that in Kamloops. And one thing I'm gonna trigger you with a little bit is when I was talking with Jerome on this podcast, where he was talking about his first year as a 16-year-old there, and how at Christmas time he said he really did want to go home at times. He said the way that the culture was there was kind of the only thing that kind of kept him there, but it was also the thing that wanted him to leave, meaning that he had a hard time getting into games. Jerome McGinley, future Hall of Famer, I'm sure he was really good as a 16-year-old, but he only played roughly half the games. And he said there was a thing with Hazer that he'd maybe get 3 shifts in the first and 2 in the third, and then if or 2 in the second, and if the game was close, he probably wouldn't play in the third. So like he wasn't playing much even when he was in the lineup. Now that was part of the ecosystem there, right? That was part of how the system worked, and maybe that was part of the way that you're saying, hey, team first, you second, like it's brought in, push from within, all this stuff. But did you experience that as a defenseman as well? Like, was there a gestation period, let's call it, for you to become a regular in that environment?
Yeah, well, he came in as a 16-year-old, and ultimately, it's actually quite understandable that a 16-year-old would maybe take a little longer and pay his dues a little bit longer. Where I came in as a 17-year-old, so we were rookies together. I'm a year older, but coming in, I went home as a 16-year-old because I wasn't going to play at all. So I went back to Cranbrook, played there. So really, instead of sitting on the bench and doing that, I went home, played got a ton of points, got a lot of fights, learned how to play a little bit against the older guys.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I'm expecting to play 30 minutes a game, say 3 shifts. Like, what is this? Like, Dad, this is not fun. I'm not having a good time at all. How are you guys doing down in Cranbrook right now? Oh, we're in first place, probably going to win the league this year, chance of going to the Nationals. I'm like, well, you guys need a D-man. Like, I can come back there and light it up down there. But no, just pay your dues. Just bide your time. Things are going to be okay. This is all part of the process. Trust it, trust it, trust it. So, I think we all had those moments, but then again, those moments that we had on the bus together, just talking to each other, it was just like, man, let's just stick this thing out and see how it works out. Obviously, at the end of the day, it pays out for you. Now it's a little bit different now. We all want the quick fix, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what we went through. We still wanted it. We wanted the quick fix. We wanted to go in and play for Kamloops and be playing 30 minutes a night and be the ultimate, the best player on the team. It didn't happen like that, and it was an understanding of that some guys get it, some guys don't. You
Yeah.
played junior. You saw the best players from North Delta walk in. You saw the guys from Sherwood Park come in, first round pick. Oh, he's going to be something else, and he walks in, and you're like, that kid. Wait till he has to put some work in and see
Yeah.
what it really takes. And ultimately, what is going to happen when he's the first star on Friday night, and he only gets 2 shifts on Saturday. Let's see how he reacts to that. Some kids never come back from it. Some players never come back from it. Those guys like yourself and that make it through, that's the true test.
Yeah.
So it was very tough on all of us at the beginning. And we had a bunch of Jason Holland was a rookie, Struds was a rookie, I was a rookie. We're all trying to be in the lineup and the Kamloops Blazers. We're all defensemen, all in our draft year, all trying to compete for that one position. So talk about hunger and then being a healthy scratch. There was it was pretty intense, extremely intense culture there.
Yeah. Uh, and I love that you talk about what you just talked about, because the transition from that and embracing that culture, accepting that culture, is hard to do as a player. It was hard to do in 1995, and it's hard to do in 2025. But now it seems like it's even harder for the players to really buy into that. Now, what's your philosophy on that just in general? Like, do you think, should a player be playing somewhere else and playing higher minutes, getting more touches, or should they be playing at the highest level they can be and fighting their way into that lineup? Is there a broad brush that you could paint with that?
It's so situational. I mean, for my experience, it worked out amazing for me. I mean, I went back to Cranbrook, but look at the variables that are attached. It was my hometown, so I'm living at home. I've got the support of the city that wants me to see me go forward. I played there in the past. I got an opportunity to be a number one guy. And also the guys that got sent down from Kamloops, that was back when the Rocky Mountain Junior Hockey League had an affiliation agreement. They all came from Kamloops. So the guys I had to beat were right there. They're sitting right in the same room as me. I know those are the top prospects. They're the same age as me. I got to be better than those guys. So for me, it was be better than him every night. So I loved it. I embraced that. I knew where the guys were. It's tough when you're looking. I wonder how so and so's doing in Saskatchewan right now. You're not even playing against the same guys. There's no. It's
Yeah.
now you're leaving that up to the scouts to convince the general managers. Now it's up to you to go on the ice. Your competition's sitting right in front of you. Go be better than that guy. So that's what I learned from it. And to be honest with you, I kind of got lucky back then because a couple of the guys that came down from Kamloops to Cranbrook, they didn't like it too much. They didn't like being in Cranbrook. They pouted a little bit, to put it that way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty typical to be let down. So maybe that's a better. They were a little bit let down and didn't just jump right back on the horse. Well, I remember coming back. We played the Creston Valley Thunder that night, and I lit it up. I think I had a hat trick and a couple so it was right there. Like I'm gonna go. Like if I'm gonna be down here, I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna score goals. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna do everything they asked me to do, and then I'm gonna go up there. So next year they can't put me on the bench, which they ultimately still do. But it was great for me to go back. Now those other guys, they came back to camp next year. I remember 17-year-old. Who were the first two guys I went after camp? Those two defensemen. They were on the other team. I was on red. They were on green. I was going straight across the light, dropped my gloves, grabbed the guy, and just started pounding on him
Yeah.
because that was my competition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that for me, it worked. It was better to go back, play, get tougher, learn the game versus sit in Kamloops, maybe, be a grocery stick. Maybe I'm in the lineup 3 or 4 times a month. And then when I'm just a grocery stick sitting there. Now my confidence gets down. Maybe it's the coach's fault. Now it's maybe someone else is on the team's fault that I'm not playing. Maybe it's my grades. I start making the excuses versus trying to find the solutions and answers. So for me, I was put in the perfect situation. It worked for me. It
Yeah.
doesn't work for everybody. It
Yeah.
doesn't work for everybody. But for those players, in my opinion, if you're one of those guys that can ultimately, if you're a cusp player and you're going to be like, say, you're a 7 and you can go down and be a 1 or a 2, you go down and be that 1 and 2 and just dominate. Treat it like you're playing at that level every time you go. Prepare like you're at that level. Eat like you're at that level. Recover like you're at that level. Focus and prepare. You do that, so when you get into that training camp next year, no problem. And that's how it was for me. It kind of happened naturally for me with the people that I was surrounded with.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And I like how you distinguish, because it is like there isn't, I mean, I asked you that wondering what your answer would be. I don't think that there is one way to handle it. It definitely is, I think, personality dependent. I think it's organization dependent too, right? Like, how do they handle their young guys? Like, what is the development path? Do they have an actual plan for them? Is this something that they do consistently? Bring
Yeah.
in younger guys. They
Mhm.
have a development plan for them, and they always are playing a bigger portion next year. Like, I think there's a lot of things you need to look at, because, like you said, for yourself, as a 16-year-old, it was perfect to go back, but as a 17-year-old, it wasn't. That was the time to step forward, and that was the time to to jump in the deep end and make it happen, right? And it worked out for you. I do believe that sometimes we rush, and maybe we'll take it a step back to maybe more like younger ages. I know that you're coaching now at a U13 or U15 level, and parents seems like they're always trying to catapult their kid into that highest level. And sometimes when you're playing as a young guy with the older kids and you're not a top dog, I think, like, at those younger ages, I'm like, I don't know if that's the right call. Like, I think if you can be in that top half, when you do go up as a young guy, awesome, do it. But why fight, is my opinion, at that age, right? Like, grow the confidence, grow the touches, grow the swagger. There's going to be lots of years in hockey where it's going to be tough. You know what I mean? Like, what's your thought on that? Do you think that sometimes we're chasing it a little too early?
Yeah, I mean, with the birth of these awesome hockey academies, and you got to give them credit. They do an amazing job. I've coached at them; they're fantastic. We've played against them; they just do an amazing job. That you see how the players are getting together. We talked about that team bonding. You see that on a lot of those clubs now, and I love the way it looks. For us down in Dallas area, something like that, we have a lot of kids that are chasing it outside the Metroplex, trying to get that AAA, that extra letter, because we only have the one team here. We have the Dallas AAA, and it's all of Texas. So a lot of people have just from social media, from watching whatever, they hear someone up in New York have the opinion of, hey, if you don't have AAA by 14, you're never going to play. Well, I disagree with that. So what I try to do is give our guys the development, take them to different areas, take them to some spots that they haven't been seen before, and give them an option or the opportunity to be seen by new scouts. So we just recently went to Vancouver knowing full well that we're a double A team going into a triple A. Well, we have a couple of triple A players. There's just not enough spaces for them.
Yeah.
But thankfully, they do stay home. They do stay back. They stay back for us. They give us an opportunity to play at a really competitive level, especially locally and at the state level. We go to tournaments. We can be competitive at tournaments. What we'd like to see is these guys, more of them staying home. That would be ultimately the best. You don't have to chase that AAA. When we're going out and playing the same academies that people are leaving our hometown for, and we're competing against them. If you would have stayed home, we probably would have beat that team. So like those are those attitudes like that we have here is stay home as long as you possibly can. If you have a good program, and then support those programs. Find out how you can help. If there's a way to volunteer, the way to improve the program. Like there's there's a lot of people out there with a lot of complaining and stuff. But if you have some solutions and a way to help that program, then I think as long as the development is the number one priority, then stick with it. If
Yeah.
it starts to become a bit more of as long as we have 20 kids on the ice and we're paying our coach this, we're paying this guy this, and we're going here, we're only going one tournament a year, but hey, we've got a great marketing scheme, we've got merch, we got this, and it becomes more of a brand versus a hockey organization or development, then I think you got to maybe think twice about it. But there's so many good ones out there.
Yeah.
Man, there's some really good ones out there, and some new ones that are starting up. That in some new towns, that CSSHL. I mean, you're up in the middle of it. I was in Coeur d'Alene there for the 1 year. I would go back there in a second. I absolutely love that league. It is what they're doing for those kids is amazing. I love
Yeah.
it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's a great perspective there, and I agree with you. I'm personally still connected to community hockey. I think it's a good thing. I think it's good for the cities that you're in. I think it's good for the kids and the connections. I even think it's good for the rivalries, right? I remember growing up and being from Vernon and wanting to beat Kelowna and wanting to beat Kamloops and and just being connected to that whole idea of being a hockey player from my hometown. I do like that. I think it's become much more regional. In some ways, it's good, right? Because you have to have these
Yeah.
zones and you draw from
Yeah.
other places. But just the idea about like hopping around and chasing the best team in some regards, which means the most wins. I just think that's not really the right way to go about it if you are just trying to, become a better hockey player. Like that that always isn't the quickest road. So we got to be careful what we're wishing for sometimes. Just going to take a short break from the conversation with Brad to say thank you to all those who reached out who are interested in becoming an ambassador or an affiliate for the Up My Hockey brand. It's an exciting time for me with the growth of Up My Hockey and with the willingness and desire and frankly the incapability of just myself to reach everyone with the ideology and philosophy of what Up My Hockey is, which is give players the mindset skills required to be the best versions of themselves on and off the ice, and you will have better hockey players as a result. Super exciting as I am at capacity and I need help in getting this message out in the geographic areas of North America. If you are a coach, if you are someone who has a network in an area that has influence, that wants to be a difference maker when it comes to the development of athletes, and you think it is the perfect time to get involved with mindset, you're passionate about hockey, you're passionate about people becoming the best versions of themselves and the best hockey player they can be, then by all means, send me an email, jason@upmyhockey.com, and see if you are somebody that should join my team. There are two ways to do it. You can either be an ambassador, that is somebody who would understand the programming, someone who believes in growth mindset, in the personal empowerment of individuals to be their best, and you would be promoting the Up My Hockey programs in your geographic area. That is one, just being an ambassador, talking about the brand, providing introductions and referrals. That is a great way to get these athletes to be the best versions of themselves. The other way is to be an affiliate, to be a coaching affiliate, to actually getting to work with me and to be able to coach the programs that I have developed to help the players yourself in the area. So there are two ways to do it. One is obviously a bigger investment and a bigger commitment. One is investing in yourself. One is strictly investing in others around you. But a willingness to do that is welcome. I would love to hear from you. Once again, jason@upmyhockey.com, and perhaps there will be a great fit. Again, check marks are a hockey network, passionate about the game, wanting others to be the best versions of themselves, and wanting to make a difference on this great game of ours. So if you have those qualities and if you have those differentiators, by all means, I'd love to hear from you. And let's get back to the conversation with Brad Lukowich. I'm going to switch it back just to Kamloops a little bit. You mentioned Donor and Iggy, and obviously those are two huge names, that were there then, and both Hall of Famers in their own right. But goodness gracious, like, Darcy Tucker was around there, 700 game NHL. Yourself, you already mentioned Strudwick, Jason Holland. Nat Domicelli was like one of the top point guys in the entire league that didn't have as robust of an NHL career for whatever reason, but was an amazing junior. Like, did you, like, if you were to go back at that time, did you think that Donor and Iggy would have been the players that they were then, like over all the rest of that you were surrounded by?
I put Baumgartner in there too. Baumer was so good on the back end. It's unfortunate that his shoulders, he had that bad year, and man, he was something else. You could just go like he just did. You go through our whole thing. I thought all of these guys were going to do amazing things. Like Randy Petruk, incredible goalie. Steve Passmore, even like Brancher. Then you got Baumer, Fergie, Keith McCambridge. I mean, Harley, Struds, Aaron Keller, Tucker, Nash, Dooling, Huska. It just makes you laugh. I mean, Louis Dumont. I mean, there's so many guys that just were so good. And then, so when like I said, the '94 team, we knew we were good. But the '95 team, we were just like, oh boy, like this is something else. And then when we added players, we're like, how do we do this?
Right.
And when they came in, because you mentioned something, there was we were ranked second. Detroit was ranked first because they had Brian Berard and Allison, so they had a really good team. I think Hodgson was the goalie. So Ticker, yeah, they had Ticker in that. So they had a good group, and that was kind of the team that everyone had their eye on, that everyone thought was going to knock us off.
Yeah.
And then even in our league, they had, there's some players, like McCabe, like they put all that group together. I think it was in Brandon that year. They put a heck of a group together to try to, with Morrison and all those guys. So you think about the actual teams that played in that Memorial Cup and the players that played in that end, and the '95 team, like Darcy Tucker. You loved playing against him, didn't you? Gosh, he was unbelievable. And then come out of the penalty box and fight the next guy. Tyson Nash, the same thing. Like we had guys that not only did they have over the 100 points, but over 100 pins. Almost our whole lineup was that way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely a crazy time for you guys. And it's interesting to look back and see how many guys actually played games like that. And that's the thing too, that I think people, well, maybe they know, maybe they don't know, but major junior hockey is obviously very, very good hockey.
Yeah.
Yet when you take the players from the major junior, like it's not like just because you led your team in points, will you play in the NHL? I mean, that's kind of like the way people think of it. That's not the case, right? Like there's a lot of other things that have to happen. But then for you to take this one team, this one snapshot in time, and to go down the list and to have multiple digits of players that played NHL and actually had careers is like crazy. I mean, that really is craziness.
So I got a question. I got a question for you. What was it like playing against us? Like what was going through your head? Like you're like, oh my gosh, like there's this one team. We would probably be the top team in the league because you guys were there. You guys were good.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for these guys, like how was that coming in every time?
Well, yeah. I mean, and then for me, it was a little different on a personal level because Kamloops was the closest town to my hometown, right? So I always had a ton of people in your building watching us, and it was. Yeah, that's a great question because it kind of changed. I mean, especially as my trajectory with the Chiefs changed too. Like we started to get a little bit better, and we were the guys that knocked you out, like of the playoffs there the last year, right? So we kind of had, at least personally, a little bit of the last laugh, right? But yeah, I mean, there were battles. They were always battles, and that division was crazy back then, right? Like Tri-Cities with Lankow and Terry Ryan, and like those teams were tough, and Portland was good, and Seattle was good with with Marlowe and the players they had there. So I mean, that whole division was hard, and you guys were obviously the cream of the crop for a while, and we definitely got sick of that song. I think a few seasons taking care of business.
No. Victoria doesn't like that at all. I think it's banned on the radio stations there.
Funny. You know what, the one, I mean, this is kind of funny because you maybe remember it, maybe not, but like from coming in there, and I think probably obviously losing more than we would have won in Kamloops. So overall, we were down 6-0 to you guys in one game of one season after the first period. And Brian Maxwell came in and, ripped us a complete new one. So it had to be actually my first or my second year. Because he left after that, and it was totally Maxi. And I remember like us just being essentially petrified. And then we ended up, it was my draft year actually. Now I remember because Joe Cardarello was on the team because he actually scored the overtime winner. But we came back and ended up winning 7-6, and it was like the biggest comeback ever against your team at home, and it was like a really big bonding experience for us to be able to do that against you guys. So you do remember that moment of time.
Yeah. We had like a TV show that they would do weekly, and I remember them showing the goals, and then they showed the Titanic So the Titanic sinked right after that. And then the Chiefs showed up. Whack, whack, whack. Yeah, I totally remember that. Yeah,
That was one
that
of
was
the last beatings I think we took until you guys knocked us out in the playoffs
That's
a couple of
funny.
years later. Yeah,
Yeah,
too funny.
definitely some good times.
Oh,
Actually, I have a Darcy Tucker question for you because as good as he was, and he was totally, I mean, super talented and
yeah.
tenacious. I don't remember him being tough in junior. Like I don't remember him fighting or like being intimidating to me. I even remember like asking him to fight in
Oh.
Spokane one time and he didn't want to. But then he went to the NHL and he became like a killer. Like did I miss something in junior? Was he kind of a killer already, or did something happen to him at the NHL level where he became sort of a new version of himself?
No, I mean, really, he kind of threw pillows in junior. Like we'd fight in like everyone did in junior in practice and stuff.
Yeah.
And he'd hit you a couple of times, and they wouldn't be that hard. Probably threw as hard as I did. I threw pillows too, and but he what was so crazy about him was like he'd go after like the toughest guy on the team. So like he'd go after he'd go after Weimer. So he
Yeah.
goes up in Portland. He goes after Weimer. Weimer just turn around, knocks him down, goes out 5 for 5, and they come. Weimer would come on the ice. Well, Tux would come out of the penalty box with his gloves off, like, "Hey, Weimer, let's do this again. Come on." We're like, "Hey, like you, like, hey, it didn't work out so good 5 minutes ago, bro."
Yeah.
Weimer would turn around, like, "Okay." He just bang and hit him again. And you go in and Tux would be chirping him in the box, like, "Just, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna kill." So there was just something missing there in junior. It wasn't that he was tough. He was nuts. He was literally nuts. Or else he'd come in and in center of the ice and then he'd turn and he'd go get it. And he'd turn and he'd take the puck and he had that jaw thing. He'd go like with his jaw and he'd dump it in your corner and he'd slow down and go get it. He'd run you. He'd run you. But like you said, and all of a sudden in junior, we were playing in Toronto. I think I hit Sundin pretty good. I probably shouldn't have hit him as hard as I did in the middle of the ice. And here he comes. And I didn't know it was him. But he hit me about 5 times before I even got my gloves off. Like I was like, damn, and he hit me pretty good. I was like, damn, Tux, you got a little spunk behind those things now.
Yeah, he got bigger, I think, for sure.
And he fought
right?
like a bunch of tough dudes too, like some bona fide tough guys that did really good. Where you're like, there's no way. Mick Magoo still kicked his ass pretty good, but
Yeah, so he always had that. I mean, he definitely had that edge, like that competitive fire. I mean, that squirreliness to him. But I think he obviously, I think he was probably 150 pounds in junior. Like he wasn't a big guy, yeah. And then he got bigger. He definitely got stronger. So that was probably part of it too, of his evolution.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you mentioned like learning how to win and learning what it takes to be a team, and then like your first couple years pro, you're in Michigan. You mentioned being there with Hitch, and then you're in Dallas, and lo and behold, you get to play 8 games in the Stanley Cup Finals that year and win the frickin' cup. Like, what was the perspective like as a young guy being a pro and being part of that so early on in your career?
That whole one is like, and it kind of works out kind of strange. Like I didn't get my name on the cup there, but it's almost like wasn't really, I don't want to say deserved at the time, because I think once you go into the Stanley Cup Finals, you deserve to have it on there. But it was like being in the front row. Like we have reality TV right now. Like if I was the guy that could have held a camera the whole time and just kind of gone around the room and been in the room and kind of been a fly on the wall, that's how it felt. Like to hear the conversations that were had, the way that they respected one another as teammates, the respect that they had for the coaching staff, the way that the management had such respect for the entire hockey department, just to leave them alone, let them do their thing. They got this. They're kind of a special breed of group here. This kind of, we'll keep doing the stuff to kind of keep growing hockey in South Texas and do that thing on the outside, and we'll get them out in the community when we can. But we're going to leave these guys alone. We're not going to tell Hitch what to do. We're not going to tell those guys what to do too much. Let's leave them alone. And that the group we kind of moved around in this kind of wolf pack and just kind of did a thing. Every city we were in, we were always together. And I'd never beating Kamloops, like we were close, but I'd never seen anything like this before. And you finally have a couple moments with the guys like Craig Ludwig, and you're like, so like, what's up with this? He's like, this is all Montreal Canadiens. This is all Bob. That's how it was in Montreal. Read the old stories about Montreal. They lived together. They stayed together. There's 5 apartments. They all lived right by each other when they won all those cups way back in the day. And then when they moved out of apartments, they moved into the houses. And so they were just very, and I was on the outside of it. I was living in a hotel. They'd come pick me up at the hotel every day. Like, just, you're part of this. We're not going to leave you out here. And they'd pick me up. They'd take me home. And I was just the new kid on the block. And so to be part of that, it felt like I was a part of it the whole way through. I got it my day with it. But just to see how that group, the Kirk Mullers, the Ludwigs, all like Guy Carbonneau, Hully, Mo, like how that group just the puzzle. It's like that's the way I look at it, as a puzzle. That no other pieces of any other puzzle fit on that in that group. It's just
Right.
the picture is clear when it's that group. You take one piece out, and it just the whole thing goes to a mess.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the Montreal Canadiens, because like 2 episodes ago or 3, I had on Brian Scrudland, who was my captain in Florida, right? My first year pro, and then he came over there with who was in that trade now. Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? It should be right in front of me. Anyways, multiple Stanley Cup winner, like a glue guy, super respected throughout the league, came over from Montreal with him. And like that was kind of like the final pieces of the puzzle that they sort of added. And Screwy was, he talked about what he thought he brought to that team, and it was more like a dressing room kind of levity sort of scenario. And obviously his work ethic and character. Oh, Mike Keane, that's who I'm thinking of. So Mike Keane and Screwy come over, and then there was also Gilchrist, I think, was on that team, right? Like another Montreal guy. And so you had these Montreal guys that were there, and what a group, like what a talented group, and to have that seat at that table and really to be a part of it, boy, that must have stuck with you for the rest of your career, even like how to treat a younger guy coming in.
Well, perfect name to say is Screwy. So Screwy, actually, Saskatoon Blades. I used to go to the Saskatoon X-Blades hockey school when I was just a little gaffer. And I remember Screwy doing this backhand shot where he hit the water bottle from the other side of the ice. And I was like, wow, this is an NHLer. This guy's. So I wound up playing with him. Well, they trade for him. I hadn't met him because there's no training camp or anything. I haven't seen him since that, but I get on the ice, and it's like one of the first practices I'm up. And I was like, again, I'm a young, cocky kid leading the team down in Kalamazoo, one of those guys that came up, very happy to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm on the ice, and maybe the night before I had maybe taken it for granted a little bit. I don't even remember, but I remember the lesson I got the next day. Just being on the ice, and we were doing like one-on-ones in front of the net, and Screwy beat the living crap out of me. He cross-checked me, two-handed me on the back of the leg, pushed me down, and I got up and I kind of laughed a little bit, like chuckled, like, like that's kind of, yeah, you're beating me, and he cross-checked me again. And he said, start fighting back. And he dropped his gloves and he's like going to pound on me. I was like, whoa. And the rest of the guys were like, hey, that's how we need to start playing. This is over. The joke is over. You got to start going to work. And I was like, oh, wow. So he picked up his gloves. He goes, you ready? And I said, yeah. And from that day on, I have never taken a shift off. Ever since that. That was one of those ones where I think if I would have went the other way, I don't think I would have. I would have been go pack your bags and go back to Kalamazoo. I think that was a crossing of the guard for me for that one. So I owe a lot to Screwy. And Screwy always, for the rest of my career, like that when we played together, would always check in on me, make sure I was always working hard. So guys like that, you can totally tell when you say what did they bring, they brought that. They brought that every single Mike Keane would skate by you in practice any time, and he'd try to knock your stick out of your hands. Just skate by and knock your hand, just so you're on. You're aware, on ice awareness of where is he at. You'd see him coming, you're squeezing your stick a little tighter with Keener's around, and he would do it up. So he's always keeping you focused, always, and whack, he'd do it while Hitch is sitting there talking to you, telling you something like this. All of a sudden, he'd skate up right behind you, whack, knock your stick out. He'd get you, and he'd turn around and give you a look. And you're like it was on, and you never ever could take a shift off. But we learned that in practice. Make sure you're focused. Make sure you're ready to go.
What a freaking lesson. I love that story. That's so awesome.
I love him.
Screwy said in his interview, and I mean, I'm going to paraphrase him, but essentially he said the one thing that he learned early, whether it was in junior or pro, he said that his hard hat always went on before his skates, and that stuck with him for forever, and that was the one thing that I really remembered about him, even, in my brief time with him in Florida there, was that, yeah, he wasn't the most talented guy, which is interesting too, because you look back in his stats in Saskatoon or whatever. I mean, this guy was, a point producer, but he fricking showed up. Like, if the boys went out the night before, he'd be the first one there. He'd work his bag off. Like, he was always the guy that was working hard and really taught everyone around him how to be a pro, right? Like,
Yeah.
how to get it done. And I love that he challenged you like that. Like, that's an old school way of doing it. I don't know how much that happens now. Do you think that happens today in practice in an NHL rink?
I think the old guys are around to do it. I don't think they do it as much in the physical sense. I think there's more of the, hey man, like, well, after practice, why don't the two of us go out and play some Xbox somewhere in a Xbox cafe or something, grab a latte or something like that. Where back then it was just, all right, Hitch would bring somebody in, teach him a lesson. I don't care how you do it. The kid's not getting it. It's not getting through. So
Yeah,
go teach him a lesson.
right.
And they did.
And you learned it. Like you
You
said, it,
learned it.
it could have gone either way for you there too. And I
Absolutely.
even like how you remember, like, the laughy, like, oh, this is sort of funny, and then it really hit home when it wasn't, like,
Yep.
he wasn't meant to be funny. Like, this is
Yeah.
for real. This
It was
isn't
funny
me
until I
being-
saw his eyes.
Yeah,
He was like, ooh, he's pissed. Like, he's telling me, and he's teaching a lesson right now. And like that, everything else went away. It was just me and him. It was like, ooh, okay,
right. Yeah. So
buckle up, boy.
you brought up fighting twice now, and I don't want to make it to be like, back in the dinosaur age, but like you talked about training camp where you went across the ice and you wanted to show everyone on both sides of the team and the guys watching in the crowd that you were ready to take this guy's spot, that you wanted it more than him. And this scenario in practice, in NHL practice, where, Screwy essentially, baptizes you into NHL pro hockey, how you have to be.
Mhm.
There's multiple junior camps now where it's actually not even allowed,
Mhm.
right? Like, they've told kids that they'll be kicked out of camp if they fight. I personally have an issue with that. Like, I don't
Mhm.
understand why that. I mean, we don't have to celebrate the fighting, but like, there should be a way to separate yourself and your want and your desire in that sense, that you're willing to do something that maybe other guys aren't willing to do. Why do you think that's being taken away?
Oh man, I don't know. I really don't. It's always been part of the game. I mean, the most celebrated sport. How many people turned off Netflix the other night when Mike Tyson was? It's a spectacle. It's part of the game. It's fun. We sign up. We know what we're doing. Now, is there those ones where the finesse player shouldn't be fighting against the boogeyman? Of course not. Like, those are scary for everybody. Even the boogeyman, those guys don't want to be going after those little guys either. So there is a respect out there. But when it comes to training camps, there is guys that play a certain way. It's like, if it's a part of your tool book. So for me, that was one of my tools back then. My story is, for my dad, was try to find a way to get onto the score sheet one way or the other. So on the back of my stick, I even have it on the one I coach now, so I can show kids. I needed to get one goal, one assist, so that's 2 points. I needed to be +1. I needed to have 2 minutes or 5 minutes. I had to, whatever way, those are all the spots. Those are all the spots that you can get on there. So you've got to go find a way to get involved. If you're not involved, you're not part of the game. So if you're a finesse guy and the scouts are up in the stands, then why would you go out there and run around and get in a fight? That's just stupid. But if you're a checker, a guy like myself, main three things: move the puck, make a good first pass, make sure you're blocking shots, make sure you're being hit or getting a hit. That's it. There's my whole game. Well, how am I going to go out there and play my game and be that physical force with the repercussion in the back of my mind if a guy turns around and punches me that I can't defend myself? So you're going to play a little lighter. So you play a little bit back. You open up your gap. Personally, I think that you're kind of hurting the kid's opportunity to play his full game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially when you're talking about roles now, roles
Yeah,
specifically. I
yeah,
was I'm my pain point is even from the idea of let's effing compete. Like
right.
who's got the fire? Like I would never claim to be a tough guy anywhere, but I did fight and I would
Yep,
fight.
yep.
And there were scenarios where that served me really well. As somebody trying to take advantage of me, trying to make a team, trying to let somebody know that I was willing to do more than this other guy who wanted to do it, right? Like I thought that was a differentiator, and I was proud of that being a differentiator, right? And
Yeah.
I just think that, like, I don't know, like, again, whether it's a part of our game, like in the NHL, and you're allowed to do it, I do think that's something. I think there's a fan piece of that, but I just think
Mhm.
like the guts and the lack of a better word, balls of the player, like I want to know that. And I think if I'm picking a team, I would
Yep.
want to see the guys that are willing to show me in some capacity that they are willing to be a Kamloops Blazer or they are willing to be a
Absolutely.
Tampa Bay Lightning, and anyways, I went to a few camps this year and stuck my head in. I was a bit disappointed, to be honest, just with
Yeah,
that level of compete. And I
yeah,
think it was almost like it's not encouraged at all, and it's almost
yeah.
like it's not encouraged. So I don't know. I wanted to dive into that with you and see what you think. How do you approach it at the U15 level when it comes to even the physicality of the game now, where they're introduced to hitting? How do you handle that?
I try to promote them to be as physical as possible within the rules. Even like a saying that Hazer stuck with us is be tough between the whistles. Don't be tough after the whistles, all that pushing and shoving. We don't need that stuff. That's what slows down the game. That's what gives us a bad name. Play tough between the whistles. If you can play tough within the rules, which is hard checking hockey, stick on puck. If you follow through with the check, make sure that the guy's not in a vulnerable spot, then that's good, clean hockey. It doesn't penalize us. It still intimidates them, knowing that this team can play physical. We're going to get hit, and we're not going to wind up on the power play. That's a pretty tough team to play against. So, and punching guys in the head, nobody cares about that. All you're doing is giving them the advantage. So we don't have any of that retaliation stuff with our squads. It's actually been really good
Yeah,
for our group here the
yeah,
last couple of years. And then kind of just cap it off, kind of jokingly, like if you guys really want to do something it's kind of fun, the thing my old man would tell me is take his number. Guy smashes you, just kind of take a look at him and be like, see you at TAC camp this summer.
yeah.
Like, oh, and then when he comes to the U15 camp at the end of the summer and he sees you looking across, give him this one. Be like, coming for you. I'm gonna get you. Those refs aren't kicking you out of games in those boys. So
Yeah,
they all they get a little chuckle. So
I
I
love it.
mean, then you'll see them in a junior camp down the road, pro, whatever. But right now, getting back at someone, everybody knows you're gonna try to get back at them. So just park it, save it for another day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Maybe that's a good segue into even some of the stuff we've been having discussions about offline and the the mindset of the game. And I
Mhm.
think that I think it's become more relevant in recent years because of some of the stuff that we've already talked about, like the attrition of being a player and how like the coming of age and there's a broader bandwidth of players that are playing the game now, I think, from a personality standpoint. So there is more people at the party, right? From different backgrounds, different
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like there's just more people there, which I think tends to be, I don't know if that's a good connection, but there's more going on that kids can't handle. It seems like right
Yep.
now, they don't have
Yep.
the tools to do it. You talking about looking somebody in the eye and like letting them know that you're going to get them, like that's pretty rare to be seen these days, and that would happen all the time back in the day. That
Oh
would be
yeah.
a discussion at the dinner table. So, like, what do you see in today's player? Obviously, I mean, I would assume you agree that the skill is high, the speed is high. These players are better at their age than we were at our age. What do you see differently from that aspect though of a mental game?
Yeah, I got to agree with all that. I think the amount of players that are out there that can play at a high skill level now is incredible. what I don't you don't see as much as is them playing together as a group. There's a lot of individual play, a lot of onus on the one guy, the top player. But that's how it is at the top level. So we've got who's the best player. Toronto Maple Leafs. They're gonna spit a name out you over here. So you got your top four guys. A lot of guys are just really focusing on being in the top four versus trying to focus on back in our day like. I had no problem focusing on being a role player guy, a guy that hit, like to fight, like to block shots, like to make passes, like to be a skill, like to set up the skill guy and be there for him. They
Yeah.
don't really have that now. It's I want to score every shift I'm on the ice. I don't want to play defense, so my preparation is that way. And then when we put them into a challenging role of something that they're not generally used to, it becomes quite chaotic. Actually, their whole game is off. Their prep is off. Their mindset was like, why am I playing with this guy? I should be playing with these guys because I mean I could score goals, but I know you can score goals. I'm trying to teach you how to play defense. Could you imagine if you were a two-way player versus just this one-trick pony? So we're trying to do those, but they got these mindsets of social media. I want to be like this. This is who I am. I think I'm like this, and I need to do it this way. Well, everybody wants to be that guy. I mean, I wanted to be Bobby Orr too, but it's just, realistically, these are my attributes. These are the best things for me. I'm going to focus on those three things and become really good at those. And if we can do those, excellent. Then we grow from that position and start to like build that nice base. Then we grow. Build base becomes stronger. Then we grow from there. And you just still, and then by the end of it, you got this foundation. It's not a base anymore. You've got a foundation. And once that foundation is built, then you can play any role. A coach can come up and tell you, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. That puts you in any role that you want. Doesn't matter who you're playing with. You're just robotic. I need you to run the left side. You're going to play 15 minutes tonight. I need you to be this type of player. You just go out and you do it. There's no extra thoughts. It just becomes robotic. Where right now it's like the opposite. Everything's like, well, I got this going on. I didn't eat right. Who is in the dressing room first? And how come I'm not wearing a letter? Why is he wearing a letter? There's so many distractions. It's very, very, I, I kind of envy them because they're growing up in a time where they have all these tools, but there's so much information. How do you pick the right stuff? So on that side, you kind of give them man, I feel sorry for you guys too. So for us, I'm trying to keep streamlined, just listen to one voice, try to stick on this path. Let's just try to stick and play this certain way and focus on our team, focus on ourselves. Whoever we play is whoever we play.
I love it was a note that I wrote all down already. It said your value as a player also has value for the team, and you touched on it again, like the three things. And why I like that so much is because a group that I work with every 2 weeks called my Inner Circle. It's a graduate group that's taken my program. Like one of the things that we've really focused on in the first half is, for lack of better words, player identity. And lots of times people will put like player identity and they'll think that there's like some type of a ceiling when it comes to a player identity. And I don't think of that way at all. I think of it, as you already said, as like this foundation. And if you can be really clear on your foundation as a player, and what I mean by foundation is exactly what you said, is how do you provide value? Like what are the things that you do better than most other guys, right? Like why are you on that team in the first place? And most players they can't answer that question. Or if they do answer it, they answer it incorrectly. And so like, I think it's so wild when you can get clear on what that is. And I impact the game, you said, by simple first pass, battling in front of the net, getting shots through from the point. Let's say those are your three things. If you do that consistently every game, you have provided value to yourself and to the group. I can recognize what you are as a defenseman, as an evaluator, as a coach. The trust is built. And now from there, yes, you can expand from that base. But if you can't check those three check marks at the end of the game, you've done a disservice to yourself and to the team. Clarity helps a lot of times. And like when I use the word mindset, like to me, player identity is a mindset. You need to understand it so you can go out there and do it. And I love that you're talking like that, because I'm sure you're helping your players understand how they provide value, and that it's not a disservice to think that getting the puck out is a small thing, or it's because I'm not told to score the goal. No one's saying don't score the goal. We're just telling you to take pride in getting it out, right? Like, Can you speak to that maybe a little bit more, like how we can expand from these bases?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, even for myself. You're triggering some things. Yeah, you do have to break it down to those small little goals. We call it the goal. That's when the light goes on at the end. But really, there's small goals as you break it down. Win your face off. Just win your face off. Well, if you're not the guy taking the face off, you got to win your battle on the wall into support, or into your first step into position. Then what? Then did we win it? Did we lose that battle? Where's our reaction time to that? So where we're losing our step on a lot is the inability to just understand our role in the moment, where we're going like, what am I going to do when I shoot the puck down there? Well, how are you going to? There's all this before we get to that shot that we have to do before that. There's those small win the battle. So if you're the centerman, win that face-off. Get low and slow in the middle. Receive that puck in the middle. Move it quick to the outside. Drive the net. Go all the way down the ice. Now he gets to it in the slot. Receive that puck. Put it on net and actually put it in the net. Don't bury it in his chest. There's so many different variables that you had to control in that little short amount of time you have to be prepared for.
Yeah. I know. I love that. Yeah, and even like the goal scorers, like the guys in my group that would consider themselves offensive players, which is great. Let's say traditionally at the start of the season or throughout their career, they've been like, if I didn't score, I've had a bad game, right? Or I haven't been productive and I'm not confident now because I haven't scored. Like when that's the goal, we get in trouble. But if that player, let's say that player X is a bigger body, plays heavy, and he hasn't been to the front of the net in 3 games, and I'm like, well, isn't that where you score most of your goals? Like, shouldn't your intrinsic value to the team is that you're bigger than other guys, and it's a hard area to go to. So why not go to the front of the net? And so if you go to the front of the net more often, I bet you your goals are going to come. Or, why are you giving the puck up on the half wall when you should be having it below the goal line? Like, that's where you create all your offense from. How many times have you touched the puck below the goal line? Oh, I haven't touched it at all. Well, there you go, right? So now you're not using your player identity properly, right? And you're wondering why you're not getting it done. So sometimes we work backwards from the performance aspects that we want, understand, how we provide value in a game, and generally speaking, the production in this case would come. So like, I love that. And sometimes it's like a massive light bulb for players, right? To be like, oh, okay, yeah. And that's a simple thing to understand too. Going to take another short break from the conversation with Brad Lukowich to remind you that upmyhockey.com is your place for mindset development, whether that be a team or whether that be an individual or whether that be an academy or an association as a whole. There is mindset programming, mental fitness programming available to you. I have a rotating guided mission that is on throughout the hockey season, meaning you can join other players from across North America on a guided mission where you get to have coaching calls with me as a group while you take the curriculum online, the lessons online, or you can have your whole team registered. Is a great way to grow a culture and to finish the second half strong. I love working with entire teams. And if you are an association member, networker, or decision maker, and you have not brought mental fitness training or programming to your city, by all means, let's have a conversation. I provide programs for your association that the players can grow. They can grow their mental fitness as they grow with you. So as they grow through the age ranks, there will be bolt-on mental fitness programming available to them. The game has become much more holistic in its development approach. And if you are somebody that is not providing mindset programming for your players, you are missing out. And this could also be a reason why players and families may stay with you if you can provide some good mental fitness training to the program. So if that's something that sounds like a good idea to you, by all means, lots of reasons to reach out. It's either at upmyhockey.com or an email to Jason at upmyhockey.com. Both places you will find the information you need, and I would love to have the discussion on how to make your player, your team, or your area better. So now let's get back to the conversation with Brad Lukowich.
And I got one for some feedback for you. So we have our F3 guy is a common theme for him. I like to be you're that guy. You're that forward. You like to stand on that F3. You had that really nice shot, and you did a really good job of being patient up in that area. As a defenseman, when I would see you up there, it makes me very nervous. But there are shifts that I'd be standing in front of the net and looking up at you. You wouldn't receive that puck for a few shifts, So maybe I float into the corner that one time. Now you do get it and you score. Where I'm getting some feedback not only from my kids but from some of the parents looking down at the ice going, hey, his buddy's working on his butt off in the corner, and then he turns around and he's not getting it to him. And all I can see is my kid standing in the slot. I'm like, yeah, well, he's doing his job, though. That's the thing. He's actually doing his job. Well, it sure doesn't look like it. Maybe he should be down in the corner helping him out. And I'm like, well, do you see how we're kind of abandoning our process? We're abandoning our job because we're not getting immediate success. We're not sticking with the process, and we're not actually letting that guy in the corner. You know what? He has a job to do. His job is to get that puck and get it to him. So if all of a sudden we start skipping that, and he does get the puck, and our guy standing right beside him, now we don't have our guy up top. So we're kind of, the times we do win it, there's no one available.
Right.
The time that he's available, we're not getting the puck. So sometimes, like in a perfect world, everything's right. Goes in the corner, turns up. There's F3. We pass to him. The guy roofs it, goes bar down. Everybody's happy. But in the real world, 9 times out of 10, I got my F3 standing up there. How do I get the mindset of the player to be patient up in that area, to just relax and rely and trust his teammates that this is part of it. I have to stay here. I have to do my stuff, play my role on the ice, shift to shift, not only season to season and day to day.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And probably a better understanding by all 3 players on the ice and why they're a group together and put on a line together in the first place would probably help them understand, right? That ability to do that. I mean, another thing just came to mind as you were saying that, like one of my clients last year, I was watching them practice at the junior level, and they were working on, like one-timers again and again and again for off the flank, right? I mean, sounds like a normal thing and a good thing to work on after practice. I've never seen him score a one-timer in my life off the flank, right? Like I just never have. And I don't think I might have seen him once get a one-timer off the flank in a game, right? So like we had a conversation after. I'm like, where do you score? Well, I score on deflections and usually on rebounds and tight or, net drives. I'm like, yeah. So don't you think that that's probably where you should be practicing? Like that should be the area that you own. Every team maybe has some Ovechkins. I mean, Ovechkin. Every team wishes they had an Ovechkin, but somebody that would score on the power play in that spot, right? But that's that person's spot. That's where they get comfortable. That's where they're gonna gravitate to more often in a game. Some players need to go to the front of the net to score. Pavelski, for instance, right? That's where he scores, right? So he's understanding that is good, right? And owning an area is good. Can Pavelski score from the high slot? Of course he can, but it doesn't mean he can't. It just means that he understands where he needs to go to be successful. And I think when players do understand that, even as young athletes, like being able to watch a player and knowing what they do, when you think of it as a coach aspect, or if I'm a WHL scout or an OHL scout, like, isn't that a great attribute where when I show up on a weekend, whether it's in January or in March, I see the player play the same way. I know what box he's going to fill in, that puzzle piece you're talking about. Like, it's a pretty big advantage for athletes, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. That's what we want as a coach. We're trying to build that picture.
Yeah, 100%. And you're building your own resume on that. And everybody wants to build their resume off like what these goals and assists say at the end of the day, but everyone needs a Brad Lukowich. Right?
Well, I hope so.
Well, yeah, 100%. And the proof is in the pudding, right? You know what I mean? Like you need somebody that's going to do that. And that's a very, very valuable thing. And I think as coaches, at least I see that at the younger levels, that some parents will think, well, you're putting a ceiling on my kid. No, there's not a ceiling here. Like you can become anything and you can grow from anything. But if you don't understand what it is that you are, you're having a hard time, like on your own development curve. And I think coaches, I think you probably maybe I shouldn't assume, but that can sometimes be a challenge, right? Like what a player wants to be or think they is compared to maybe where they are, and having the process and the mindset required to grow through that.
Yeah, and I'm in that 12 to 14-year-old window where you've got certain kids 1 month ago were 5'6". Now he's 5'9". Like these guys are just growing up. Like they're shooting up, and some aren't. So they're even the players they're playing against that they could get a step on are taking two strides and they're lifting one stick. It happened to me. I didn't understand that when I had to have that talking to because I was a late bloomer. The guys I would dominate at the 12U level, all of a sudden at 14 were catching me, knocking me over with one hand, and I'm like, what is? I'm just awful. I'm terrible. That self confidence is gone. No, no, this is just a growth thing. Focus on your game. If you focus on your game and then you grow, you're going to be unstoppable. So that's the focus I'm trying to get with a lot of these guys right now. Like we have a couple smaller statured guys that are battling the puck a little bit right now. Focus on your game. Don't focus on anything else, but try to work on your game, get better, get faster by moving the puck quicker, work harder because your legs are a little bit shorter. So you got to take two more strides than the other guy, work into place, be prepared when you get there and execute. And then when you grow, this game is going to become very easy for you. But when it becomes easier for you, then you got to up your game again.
Yeah. Oh, what great stuff there. I love that you touched on that. The small player adolescence, not being through puberty yet, like
Yep.
it can be a game changer. Well, it
Yeah.
is a game changer. I mean, for a vast majority, especially the late birthdays that I find, like that's where they get picked over. I'm going to give you a small stat. So I geeked out on the draft for like 2 years, WHL draft. You would think, I mean, theoretically, in a birth year, there should be equal representation from the quadrants, right? From like January through March, the middle birth, and then the end. But we all know that that's not the case, right? And so when I actually looked at the numbers, both years in a row was almost exactly the same that I crunched the numbers on. The second and third quadrants of the year had what you would think they're supposed to have, like the 25% representation from players. But on the first and like from the front and back ends of the quarters of the year, the back end lost a lion's share of players. So they only had 10%. 10% of the draft goes to the last 3 months of the year, and that all goes to the beginning 3 months. So what's that? 25, doing my math, like 40%. So it's 40% in the first 3 months, 10% of the draft happens from the boys born in October, November, December. What does that tell you, Brad? Right? What does that tell you? They didn't grow, right? Like that's the only thing. There's no way there's not as talented players in that group. It's just that they're not as big. So how do we stay relevant? And to your point, like you just said a lot of things that were awesome there. Like if you can stick around, right, wherever it is that you're sticking around, right, you can make AA, or if you're lucky enough to play AAA, or if you can play prep as a late birthday, a late developer, you are going to be forced to learn the game better than those guys who develop earlier. That's a massive advantage, right? Moving pucks, being more aware, being able to have better reads, scanning now you have to get better at. You're going to be forced to work out in the gym and try and get quicker. I mean, all these things. But like if you can have that mindset as a younger guy, any younger players out there listening right now, like the things I just said, like take immense amounts of pride in that and just recognize that you will grow at some point and you're going to have all these distinct advantages over the guys that right now might be passing you because they're stronger, bigger, because they have hair on their legs. Right?
Pretty much, really. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just they get content. We've seen all those guys, and while you're working out and they're just naturally growing and just kind of getting their natural growth, they're not putting in the extra effort. You see, that's where that little you see guys passing lap guys in these next 3 years, the 12, 13, 14, 15, like those years right there. Tons of exchange in talent levels and where you can assert yourself.
Yeah, well, because, and like you said, like, so there is a complacency, I think. So those listening that are early growers that are having success, and if you can look around your team and recognize that you're bigger and you're stronger, right? So you have a natural advantage right now. It might not necessarily be because you're more skilled and know the game better, right? So like having the self-awareness to recognize that, hopefully that'll help those players now go to work.
Yes.
But there's that side of the game knowledge that I think people overlook a lot too, right? Like if I am big and strong and if I can skate the puck past somebody or through somebody lots of the times, that is like my first option, right? I can do that. The smaller player can't do that. So now they have to devise a plan, a strategy, understand the game to be able to get the puck where they need to get it to. If that bigger player never is forced to do that until major, junior, let's say, and sometimes that's where it happens, right? And now you're trying to learn the game because you're not as big and strong and can't skate the puck past people. You're at a distinct disadvantage, and it's hard to catch up in that environment. So I think there's good lessons for both sides of it listening here, right? Like, you know, there could be glory days right now, but like recognize, you know, if you want to work at your game, you can still do it. Moving the puck past people and using your teammates is a huge thing, right? Even if you're the best player on the team, it helps your development. God, I just can't stress that enough. I get super passionate about it because it's like, moving pucks. Like when you said play quick, like that is how you can play quick, right?
You have to move that puck. Headman that puck. All those old sayings that were around when we were kids. Move that puck. Play with pace. The less you have the puck, the more effective you are. Like just all those little sayings. Like move that puck and then move your feet so you can get the puck back.
Yeah. And you even the stuff you talked about being in that high zone and playing in soft areas, like learning how to play without the puck and support people is such a big piece of the game. And the last one I'll just say is like, if you are good right now, like being great means making people around you better too.
Yes.
So yes, it is the Instagram era and it's the highlight reel era, and you see guys going end to end, and that's what gets put on all these tapes and on your television feed. But the guys that are like the Sidney Crosbys of the world, like that make everybody on his line always better, is like, that's where the juice is. Like, be that guy, you know, be that guy, make everyone else better. That's my wish for anyone listening right now, is that you take immense amount of pride in making your teammates better, and you are actually making yourself a better player in the process of doing that too. So, okay, stopping with the lecture on youth development, we're going to go back to you, and I want to talk about the second time through it. Actually, you know what I want to talk about, because it must have been a big thing for you from a mental side, was the trade from Dallas to Minnesota back to Dallas without even going to Minnesota. Like, how was that experience coming back, being in the locker room? Like, talk to me about that as a young pro.
It was pretty wild because it was basically, I didn't know what was going on. It was just a move to get us away from doing getting taken by Columbus.
Oh, okay.
So there was that draft, right? So Columbus had already kind of mentioned, you know, there's a chance that we may take him, showed some interest in me. Minnesota was like, well, you know, we're interested, but we kind of like this other guy. We didn't, but Dallas was ultimately like, well, we don't even want to lose him. So what if we do this? So then it was just kind of one of those ways back in the day. And but I knew nothing about it. So as soon as it happened to me, I was like getting rid of my car, because I had a two-wheel drive, so I wasn't going to work in Minnesota. So getting rid of my apartment. I flew home, told my parents, and I flew back to Dallas to get out of my apartment. And like the next day, I was like, oh, hey, by the way, you're back. I'm like, jeez. Okay. So that was it.
So did they tell you after the fact that was the plan all along, or did they just? Oh, they did.
After. Eddie actually told me after. Eddie's like, we were dying to tell you. Remember when we were out at like the big apple? I'm like, hey, we were all sitting around the corner. It got really quiet. Yeah, we were about to tell you. I was like, we could have. He goes, no, we would have got in trouble. I was like, okay, well, whatever. I was wondering why you guys were like making sure I came back to town and weren't letting me do that. No, don't move your stuff. Leave it where it is.
Right. Wow. Okay. So, all right. So that wasn't what I thought it was. I thought that would have been like, you know, a reconsideration. Then you're coming back to a place that maybe you thought never wanted you in the first place, right? Like, but it was all a master plan to keep you.
Yeah.
So
they liked me.
That's, sounds like you got some guys coming back in there. Is that the?
Yeah, some guys are starting to pop their heads into the old alumni room.
Great. So the pickup game's over. Well, maybe it's been an awesome chat, but I did want to talk to you about the Tampa Bay one, because you were, you know, obviously you had the 8 games, and we didn't really talk about that. I don't know why 8 games in the Stanley Cup Finals isn't enough to get you on the cup when the whole team only played 23 or 24.
Right.
So let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the one where you played 18, Tampa Bay, 04. Marty St. Louis, all these guys, like that whole group coming together and winning one, and obviously probably feeling like you're a way different piece of that puzzle. Like how did that one settle for you?
Yeah, that one was unbelievable. You know, came in, got traded on our wedding day, so it was an adventure right from the start. And then a month in, my wife announces she's pregnant. You know, we have an awesome first year. I had an amazing partner with Dan Boyle. Had a great first year. We bowed out in the second round. Um, to New Jersey, where we thought we were like, oh, you know what, we may be onto something here. We came back the next year. We thought Torts had pushed us hard one year, but we went even harder. And please, geez. And so we thought Torts pushed us hard one year, but the second year we won, it was another animal. Like he upped he kept held us to another level of accountability with one another, with him, and it just wound up being an incredible season for us. And you know, being down in Tampa, it was perfect. We were kind of out of sight, out of mind, and we could kind of go about ourselves. And at the end of the year, people started noticing, hey, this Tampa team's kind of for real. They keep doing their thing. But then there was this team over on the West Coast. You know, at the end of the season, started up in their game with Calgary. They were pretty nasty. So it was knocking off all the number ones. Got a little bit nerve wracking for us. We're watching them every time we're watching games. We're seeing how they're playing, and we're like, ooh, there's some similarities here about. Defense first hockey is actually being played out west instead of this run and gun style. So this could be an interesting go for us. So we'll see. We'll see how it all comes out. And it was exactly as advertised.
What a
Defense
battle.
first, bunch of guys trying to kill each other, and it was a blast.
How was that coming back? And I mean, from your own mutual relationship with Jerome, like, so now you're playing Jerome. Obviously, I mean, it's probably a lifetime. It would have felt like since you were in the Blazers together, but that there is still a connection there, I'm sure. And he was the big piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and it was tough to hate him. It really was. But I mean, it was really tough. He made it a little easier after him and Vinny went at it, though, because that was like, oh boy, Vinny's my boy, buddy. It's a pretty good scrap. So
That was an unbelievable scrap. That was so
unbelievable
cool.
scrap.
What a great piece of that. That was one of
Yeah.
the best pieces of that series, with those two
Yeah.
going at it.
Yeah. Of all the battles, that was the toughest one because not only do I have the utmost respect for Jerome as a junior player, but in the NHL, like honestly, he's if not the best player I've ever played with, it's him and Mike Modano, right? Like him and he's unbelievable. And as a person, there's no one in the world you don't want to see not have a Stanley Cup. Like Jerome should have a Stanley Cup. Come
Right.
on, let's
Yeah.
get him out of retirement. Let's send him somewhere so he can have a cup. Like I love the guy to death. So that was probably the hardest part of the whole deal. I was so happy to win and to get it there, but just looking over and be like, man, Iggy, like you deserve a cup so bad. You played so hard. If anyone deserves a cup on that day, it was him.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a great place to leave. I know you got some guys in there, and thanks for telling them to be quiet. But maybe we'll do part 2 and we'll get into Torts, because I love that idea too of like holding guys to a high standard and what you would have learned from that. But you've been super gracious with your time, man. Thanks for sharing all your ideas about development and sharing your stories along the way. Is there anything you want to leave my listeners with as parting goods?
No. Happy Thanksgiving from the States. Coming up here this week. So, no, just keep working hard. You know, just silence the doubters. Anyone tells you can't do it, they're full of it, man. You can do it.
I love it. All right, man. Well, that's it. And until next time, I appreciate you coming out.
You got it, buddy. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to the conversation with Brad. Lots of good stuff. You know, the one that sticks out to me as I just reflect on what we talked about, well, 2 things actually. Player identity is massive. Like I said, I've been working on it with my inner circle group about them being able to embrace and understand who they are as players and how they provide value not only to themselves but to the team. This is something that you have to get clear on. You have to understand the ways in which you can impact a game positively and to do it as consistently as you can. This helps you be understood by coaches and by evaluators. It also gives you a framework to feel really good about yourself and to grow confidence around. By all means, this is conversations you should have with your family, if you are a younger player, or with your coach. If you are confused at all with what attributes you bring and how you provide value, have that conversation, ask questions, and then dive into the execution of that. I love that piece of the conversation. And the other one I'll double down on is the idea of small players in youth hockey. If you are a smaller player, especially prepubescent, if you've not gone through puberty yet and you're seeing people get bigger and stronger around you, hang on. You will grow. It will happen. Do not get discouraged. Find it and view it in a growth mindset capacity as an opportunity to improve where others aren't. So yes, you aren't as strong in the corner. Yes, you might not be as fast right now. Yes, you may get knocked off the puck, but you can learn to move pucks. You can learn new ways to attack the game, to get in and out of trouble, to make players better around you, to understand your ice awareness and to make your reads better. All these things that you could be doing, like you're essentially being forced into doing it, or you need to go away, right? I don't want you to go away. I want you to view these things as places where you can improve and you can still impact a hockey game. And once you do get the growth spurt, and once you do start to get stronger and bigger muscles, now you're going to have all these other areas of the game that are going to be an advantage to you. So do not get discouraged. Stay positive. Stay in the fight. Work your tail off to get better, to get stronger, to be more knowledgeable of the game, and things will work out for you, I promise. So I think that's a great way to leave. Thanks, Brad, for being with us. Thank you for being with us. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.